Today, let's sew and design a tank top perfect for summer. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are starting on the first step of making my self-drafted dress using some of the most expensive fabric I've bought. Now, I really want to make sure it turns out well since this is going to be a self-drafted pattern, so I'm going to be starting off making a tank top. And as you can see, I have the front kind of drafted, and then I'm going to be combining the back with some pattern pieces, and I'm using this remnant I got from Joann Fabrics that I think will be really nice for the tank top. It'll work well for work, and I'm going to be using this as kind of my main wearable mock-up, if you will, and then if this works out, I will then just be making it longer for the dress format. So the top is going to be really simple. I'm just going to keep it this nice crew neck line, and then the back there will be a little tie is how it will kind of come together. I have one dart on the side. Everything's just really simple, as I really want, when it comes time for the dress, that expensive fabric to really stand out as there's little beads. It's very nicely done. Now the back is actually from a shirt pattern that I used for my Liberty of London fabric that I had gotten, and I'll include a link to that video in case you're interested. I really like how that shirt turned out though, so I think that this back pattern pieces will be perfect for what I'm looking for. So the first step was just to pin all of my pattern pieces out, so including this little mock-up that I had done. And I know that sometimes you will actually take that mock-up that you did on your dress form and then transfer that to paper, and then from paper go to the fabric. I just don't really have enough room for all of those steps, so I'm hoping that doing it in kind of like this condensed version will not be too big of an issue. Once I had everything cut out though, I did notice that I'm going to have to take both a front and a back for that second portion of the back. So instead of having the facing, I'm going to be using a lining. So the big thing I want for my nice dress that I'm going to be doing is needs to be lined due to how the fabric is designed. It's a little itchy if it would just be, like that tweed fabric. So I'm going to be adding a lining, and I'm going to be adding a lining to this tank top. So if you remember from my other fabric, what I did was you had to have this spacing. So there's 4 pieces of this little portion at the top. Instead though, I'm just going to be doing 2 for the outside, and then there'll be 2 for the lining, and that's how everything will come together. So I decided to drape this on my dress form to see what everything looked like. The tank top looked like it was coming along really nicely. The top is going to fit well. It starts to kind of slope out at the sides though, and I don't really want it to do that, especially when it comes time for the dress. So I am going to be cutting some off on the sides, and then once I had that all figured out, I just cut out everything for my lining and I began sewing my shirt. So this was really straightforward and easy, as I was able to follow all the steps from the previous new look pattern, and everything started to come together well. Then I started to iron everything. I've really gotten into ironing and using the steam setting lately. For a while I wasn't using as much steam, but I found that it just helps so much. And with this tank top, it's going to be relatively simple and straightforward to do. So I'm trying to really focus on all of the finishing touches, making sure everything is laying nice and flat and smooth, making sure that I am clipping the curves, pressing everything nicely, as when it comes time for the dress, I don't want to have any slip ups since that fabric was so expensive. Now it was just time to combine both those panels onto the back so I could have that one full back piece, and do this as well for the lining so that I will be able to have both the outside piece, which is that pretty floral purple and pink fabric, and then it was time to start actually constructing our tank top. So what I'm going to be doing is sewing the shoulder seams first all the way across for both the outside pieces as well as the inside pieces. And I noticed that there's going to be a little fabric that doesn't exactly match up, so I did make note of that for my pattern pieces when I do the dress, that I do just need to cut off a little bit of the shoulder portion so that it will lay correctly and it will hit like I'm hoping that it will on the shoulders. Next, I did sew up the sides of the tank top thinking that this is how I would finish it. What you'll see in a second is that this ended up being not correct, and I should have undid it, as I really wanted to focus on getting the armholes and the neck holes finished. So this is what the tank top looked like at the moment. Everything did fit really well and I was happy with it, but to get everything finished correctly, I did have to take out those side seams, as I followed a sewing tutorial, and I will include a link to it, that was really straightforward on how to finish off the seams of a tank top, and I found that this was a great way to go about it. So once I had taken out those side seams, I did start on the neckline for the tank top. So to do this with right sides together, I pinned the neckline of the outside with the lining, and this is going to be on a curve, so I'm really going to be taking my time when I'm sewing this. I was sure to backstitch at the beginning as well as backstitching at the end to make sure that the seam was nice and secure. Once I had gone through all of this, it was then time to really clip the curves. And this is where I was talking about that I want to make sure that everything laid nice and smooth. When it comes for the dress, it's going to be much thicker fabric. So I'm gonna have to make sure that everything is laying nicely, that I'm pressing everything out, that I'm clipping all the curves that I need to. So I wanted to focus on this tank top to make sure that I understood how to do that. Next, it was time to press all of this out, which again, I used steam for to make sure it was a nice crisp edge, and then I just understitched that entire neckline so that the lining would stay in place and that it would all lay very, very nicely. Now it was time to start working on the armholes, and this was where the tutorial really came in handy, so I will be sure to include that somewhere in the description up at the top in case you're interested as well. But basically you kind of fold all this in on itself and then you sew up the armhole for one side of the tank top, so again with right sides together for your outer fabric and your lining, and then you kind of pull this all out and you'll see that you have one of those armholes are actually now complete. So this is why you had to make sure that the sides of the tank top were not sewn up. And then once you did that, you just went through and you did the understitching again. So just making sure that everything is laying nice and flat and smooth and you're understitching it. I did find it a little difficult to understitch, and I ended up doing this in two separate instances. So one coming from like the left side and one coming from the right side. But overall wasn't too bad. I then just repeated this all for the second side as well so that I could have both those tank top sleeves done, and then I clipped the curves to make sure that everything was laying nice and flat and smooth. Once that was all done, it was then just time to do some more understitching, and then everything was pressed out so that it would be laying nice and crisp and that I would have those really nice curved edges that I was looking for. Now it was time to finish off the sides of the tank top. I just did a straight stitch, and then I did go through after I did that and serge it so that the edges were all nice and clean. And then for the bottom, for the hem, I did serge all of that as well. And then I just took a nice rolled hem, so as you can see here, I just went all the way around and sewed that up so that the hem could also be done. Once the hem was all sewn up, it was time to work on that back closure. So I made some little ties with some of the leftover fabric, and then I pinned them at the very top, and I'm just going to take a straight stitch down one side and then a straight stitch down the other side so that I can have the ties be included. This is what it looks like when the ties are going to be on there, so I think it's going to lay really nicely and it'll give it just a fun little detail that will be much better than what the button was on the shirt before. So I just went through, took that straight stitch, being sure to backstitch at both the beginning as well as the end of all these seams, and then with that my tank top was complete. I love how it turned out. I think this was a really good mock-up and a really good first step. I think that just making this all longer will work exactly how I want for the dress itself. The back came out looking really nice and neat and clean, and then I did have a little fabric left over and made a little matching bag. Let me know if you want to see a pattern for that. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.